and Elijah, we worked on the WCTC Health System project. Andrew was in charge of testing and database management. Me and Emma worked as co-scrum masters. Elijah was in charge of the website development, and Tato was in charge of the front-end development. In our presentation today, we're going to introduce you to the app. We'll demo some of our work as well as show off our team's work. We'll give a brief reflection, and then at the end, we'll stop for questions. So what is it? The WCTC Health System is an existing electronic health record system in which WCTC Health students can practice data entry and system usage.
What does it do? It's a hospital administration site which allows for the adding and deleting of patients. It also allows for the storing of personal information as well. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Emma.
So why does a project like this exist? This actually simulates what hospitals and clinics use in the real world to keep track of their data. This makes it a useful tool for the students in our medical programs, such as the nursing or the dental hygienist programs, giving them some real world experience with these kind of tools.
And what value does it provide for nursing students? It gives a mirror of a real world work environment on the technical side, and it gives familiarity with different terms, screens, and processes. For IT students, it gives us experience in a large code base, navigating complex databases, and collaborating via Git tools.
All right, and then I'm going to do a quick demo of the basic functions of the website and project. So this is the home page. This is what you get to when you log into the service. From here, there's two main things that you're going to use: the patient search and the checked-in patients. From the patient search, it allows you to search for any patients in the database, and you can search by name, any of the information used in the database or their date of birth. You can also leave it empty, and it will just bring up a list of patients that you can then sort by any of the information up here. From here, you can also go to the Create a New Patient tab, which we will explain later in the demo. And there's also patient details pages to find out more information about them. There's also the checked-in patients, which is patients that have been checked into a hospital setting or the like. And then from here, you can see what patients are currently in, their room number, and you can even view more about their encounter. The encounter is what the checked-in information is. So it'll bring up, so encounters are like what happens when you check in or discharge a patient. It shows all the information about where they're checked in, why they're checked in, what time, etc. And that is the main functions of the project. I'm going to pass it back to Danny to preview a little bit of the back end.
Awesome. So first, I want to go over some of the back end we did on the project and show some screenshots of the code and explain what it's for. So the first thing we did was we updated the application to the newest versions in tech, which is a high priority for our team this semester. This was important because we wanted to ensure that all of our systems were up to date and working correctly with the updated versions of tech. We also created this patient contact model. Before, when we would either add a patient, edit a patient, or view a patient, we'd only get some of the information we wanted. This was because we had separate entities for things like the patient's details, their insurance, contacts, and so on. So this patient contact model was used to collect all of that information from each entity and then have a place where we could access it all from. This allowed us to access or input whatever information we wanted among multiple tabs when doing things such as creating or editing a patient, making our whole site look a lot cleaner. We also made changes to the patient's entity itself by changing the way we reference its patient's aliases. We also removed the patient military service entity and its references and added the military fields to our patient entity. I think this allowed our code to be a lot more easily accessible for future students working on the code so that they won't have to sift around as much in order to find certain information. And then finally, using a tool called Selenium and other testing resources that Andrew researched, we ran our changes through tests to ensure that things worked as intended. I'm now going to hand it back off to Elijah.
So I'm going to talk about something we were assigned this semester, which was to work on the encounter forms and methods, specifically the add, edit, and delete forms and methods. It's important to work on these because encounters are used to manage checked in and discharged patients, as I said before, holds all that information. So it's important for these to be up to date and working and to include all the correct information. So in order to show our work, I'm just going to give a quick demo of what the process looks like. So from a patient details page, you can add an encounter. You'll fill out all the information needed to the encounter from here. You can enter in all this information. Then once you've entered in the information for the encounter, you can also enter in the providers that would be associated with it. And it will show all the providers available and their specialty. So that way you know who and what you're assigning to each field. From there, you can create the encounter. Bring it back, it shows you what patient it's assigned to and all the information you just entered. If you entered anything wrong, you can then edit it to correct any information or add extra providers. But there's also another function, which is the discharge. From here, you can select the time, the disposition, and then you can add any notes. And then you can also discharge patients from the encounter so they will no longer be checked in. And if there's any encounters that are not needed anymore or junk encounters or need to be cleared out, there's also the delete function, which will delete an encounter from the list. I will now pass it off to Tato to talk about some of the front end changes.
Tato, I think your mic might have gotten muted.
Thank you for that. But speaking of an encounter, we had to make sure that we remove some of the navigation buttons in the encounter menu. So it looks like this as it stands. And we remove those buttons into the patient care assessment form so that you'll be able to navigate back into that specific encounter. And one of the major priorities that we had to do was to allow for the intake of units that you are currently working on. We also had to make sure that the whole application was mobile friendly, and we also had to make sure that all the drop downs had a placeholder in there for them. And with that said, I'm going to hand over to Emma.
Alrighty. Next, we'll take a look at, we also did some work with the physician's notes page and the add, edit, and view patient pages. The physician notes is a way for doctors to keep track of information on patients that may not need its own form, but still, for example, if a patient was not doing well with communicating via a 1 to 10 pain scale, a doctor could make note of that, and then when a new nurse or doctor comes in, they'll have that kind of context for going forward. So what we did is we added some validation to the note field to make sure that note would be filled out before it was saved. We also worked with the add, edit, and view patient fields, allowing for more detailed patient information to be viewed and setting up for more information to be added in the future. So taking a look first at the physician notes, here we have a checked-in patient. If we go to physician notes, we can add a new note, and then you'll see we already had the note type, the day the note was written, the author and provider, and a co-signature. And we added some validation for the physician note itself and added a bit of styling to the bottom to give the error message maybe a bit easier to see and read. Next, for adding, editing, or viewing a patient, if you go to create new patient at the bottom, you'll see we'll have 2 tabs. The first tab, this is the content that was already present, info on the patient's demographics with their name, their age, their language. And then we added a second tab for patient contacts. This covers how to contact the patient themselves, as well as their legal status and if they need a legal guardian, and their emergency contact. We made sure that this was set up so that you only had to enter a first and a last name. And then you could create a patient. The view patient is in the same layout as the add and edit forms for consistency. And then you can see you can still toggle between tabs. And if you want to edit or add information, you can go to edit in the upper right corner. And you can add information. You can edit. And you can add fields in other areas as well. And then you can save your changes and you'll see the data has been updated. Next, I'll let Andrew take the lead. Oh, Andrew, your mic.
Okay. When we inherited this project, there was nothing included to address testing. We installed a few tools to meet this need going forward. First, we installed a unit testing framework, which allows us to test each module we've worked on and its compatibility with other modules. Next, we installed a tool to run automated browser tests, which can record a series of clicks and field inputs and other manual commands to use over and over. Form entry is a long and repetitive process that can take a long time, and with the automated testing, you can finish it in a few seconds. And quickly, I'll give you an example. This is what one of those tests will look like, just the different fields it's touching. And when you run it, it runs through the exact process I'm going to show of creating an order. So it just does this really fast, so we don't have to do it manually anymore. Another area we worked on was rebuilding the ordering system. An order is any action a healthcare provider would perform to address the next need of a patient during their visit. For example, sending a patient for blood work, x-rays, or medication, and their admission and discharge are all classified as orders. The ordering process had been worked on in the past previously, but did not work when we started this project. After some database changes, there were a lot of files that needed to be changed and updated to fit the new system. Each order type has its own form. And we addressed the first need, admission order, to lay the foundation for future order types going forward, as each of these order types is going to need its own form. So an admission order form, this is, to get to that form, you go to a patient's orders, and then there's an add new order, and then that'll be an admission. This is what the form looks like. I pre-filled it, but creating it takes you back to that same page we were just at. It's added to the list, and then you can get details and delete it if needed. And with that, I'll pass it off to Danny.
So next we have is the reflection. So as a group, we ran into a few challenges. The first one being that for a lot of us, this was our first time being in a sprint. For those who don't know, a sprint is a time period that us developers have to complete a certain amount of work. In this case, for us, we had 2 weeks to complete certain tasks and objectives that we laid out for ourselves. So this whole process of setting up a sprint, working on those tasks, and then reflecting and making changes was new for a lot of us and something that we needed to adjust to.
Another challenge we ran into as a group was time management, because we all have busy lives outside of school. Most of us have jobs and have home responsibilities that we need to find a way to fit into our schedule along with our schoolwork. And since this was such a big project, we needed to make sure that we were managing our time correctly so we could get the work we needed to get done within the sprints and make sure that we got enough work done and effectively as well.
Since this was a large code base, a major problem that we ran into, especially in the beginning of the semester, was how to navigate and find all the right pages that we are working on, and that it got better as the semester progressed.
We also had to figure out how to prioritize, not just within a sprint assigning people tasks, but also within the tasks themselves, figuring out how much time to devote to planning, how much time to devote to actually working on and testing, and at what point we needed to ask for help rather than keep working on a project.
The database was very large and well built, which ended up making some of our work more complicated. During the semester, database issues would be discovered, changed, and in several cases resulted in us having to redo work we had just done.
So one of the things we learned how to manage our tasks a lot better in sprints. This was more so not how much you could get done, but when the best time to get certain tasks done in relation to your team. Because everyone was working on different things, we learned how to better prepare ourselves to work around each other so that certain blocks wouldn't come up.
Another thing we learned as a group was how to inherit a project with a large code space and database. So that way we can manage it and move between the files correctly and find what we need, the information we need to find quickly and effectively without lagging behind or getting really confused and caught up in the details.
We also learned how to work effectively and productively with other group members.
We also learned more about how to research, both just searching something online, but also how to navigate the documents for some of the languages and projects we were using.
And finally, our code base is stored on GitHub and uses Git for version controlling. Collaborating on a large project taught us that best practices and using the same tools and workflow is essential for a successful project.
All right, that concludes our presentation. If anyone has any questions, feel free to ask.
So I have a question. This is Jeff. I'm just curious if you all felt it's a big project and we've been seeing this thing grow from semester to semester. And I think what you all did was really impressive. It's really taken shape, that application. I'm sure that the medical students are really benefiting from it. I'm just curious, did you all feel like you were well prepared for this challenge going in your courses that you took? Do you feel like you were well prepared for it?
I think for me personally, I think the biggest thing I wasn't prepared for, I think from what we learned, I learned a lot of like the coding things, but to this point, we had not worked on like anything, or like we hadn't like inherited a project, and every project we worked on up to this point was kind of from scratch. So I think that was the only thing I wasn't prepared for, just taking on, a large code base like that and then having to like learn it and adjust to it, if that makes sense.
To add to what Danny just said, I don't think as much as prepared I was, I don't think I was that to a level where I feel I should have been, especially since I had taken some of the database classes prior and then I took a break in between them and this class. I feel like if I had taken that in following each other, probably I would have been in a better space.
I felt fairly prepared, especially because we had previous classes that, rather than teaching us explicitly what we were going to use for this project, they gave us the tools we needed to figure out what to do. And we also had some experience with at least one group project before we worked on this, which was very helpful.
I would echo Emma's sentiments about the preparedness of this as well.
Yeah, me too. I think the biggest hurdle for me was just understanding all the different medical terms, and some of the redundant naming was a little confusing, but from a skill aspect, I think we were pretty prepared.
Any other questions for the group?
Well, this is Angela, and of course I can't go without saying something, as everybody who comes every semester knows. No, the group was really good to work with, and we did have to change focus. We started, some of you were on the team last, or not on the team, but on the showcase last time, and a lot of the forms that had been started, we were planning to finish them this semester, but we discovered a couple of weird things that went haywire somewhere that we had not discovered previously. We don't know exactly when or how they got corrupted. So they spent a lot of time backtracking and redoing stuff that we had working at one other time. And that seems to be, I think, really the biggest challenge with a project like this is we make 10 steps forward and then we take a couple steps backwards, and then we kind of pivot and readjust what we're planning on working on. So the patient registration was something that was probably completed, I think, almost 3 years ago, if not even longer. And then all of a sudden, one day I went in to use the system for something and realized that none of the patient demographics were there. And I hadn't even noticed it because I was so focused on the things that we were working on in that moment. So that's when they took up that mantle to try to get that prepared. So all the fields were in the database. They just had to kind of figure out how to make the forms work. And they did a really fantastic job on that. The other thing that we had discovered partway through the project, I've been working with nursing. We're trying to get it so that they can use it in their sim labs for the students to document patient care assessments. And this is something we've talked about for so long. And they're, they're trying to figure out how they're going to implement it on their side and things like that. And in doing some work for them, I discovered that our patient care assessment started blowing up and we didn't know why. So they also pivoted and, dropped what they were working on there and did that. So I think that they really accomplished a lot this particular semester based on what I'm seeing here. So I'm real pleased with all their work. And I give lots of hand claps to everybody because it was a lot.
This is Allie. I'm in my car, so I wasn't able to actually look at any of the screens, but I've been listening, and I have to echo Angela. The work you described is really impressive, and it really mirrors so much of what happens when you do inherit a code base. And that's one of the reasons I think the exercise you guys go through is so valuable, is quite frequently that's what you're going to do as you're getting your jobs, is you're going to be inheriting these code bases, and you're going to be potentially walking into organizations where you don't know the language. And so the fact that you had to go through these things and you had to pivot the way Angela is describing is really great. And it's great to hear that you were very successful in those aspects of it. So really nice job, team.
We had a question come in on the chat. I think it's for Angela. How many students will be using this app once you guys roll it out?
As of right now, oh gosh, it's a hard question to answer because it varies. I know in nursing, they are planning on using it in their patient simulator lab. They want to start off with one level at a time. So basically it's one nursing class that's working on it. I don't know how many students they typically have, but I know it's a full program. So I would assume that they're probably at the 20 or so students per semester. I can't say for sure. In my foundations class, where I want to introduce it and really start getting students into the general gist of a medical record and how registration works and how patient stuff works together, that class is almost always at or above our max capacity. So we're usually between 20 and 24 students every fall and spring. I'm looking at using this in my informatics class. I actually want to get them involved in some of the testing and things of that nature, because now that the system is getting bigger, it's becoming more difficult for me to do all the testing on my own. And when I have students who are looking for a project, their schedule doesn't necessarily mesh with the schedule of the students working on the project. Those classes are a smaller group right now. We've probably got 6 students at a time at most, so they'll be using it. Once we get it where we have physician forms and some orders and medications and results and a little bit more robust content, then we're going to actually deploy it to our coding students who would use it as the medical record source data for their medical coding. When we do that, then we're going to really see the numbers expand, because again, it'll be at least 20 students every semester going in and coding medical records out of here. So that I know, those are the kind of the preliminary numbers that come off my head. We have talked to medical assisting who are interested because they use the same thing I'm using right now and they don't like the cost and it doesn't really do what they want it to. But I think they're kind of hanging back to see how it works for nursing before they jump in. So, and I could foresee other clinical programs possibly using it if they do documentation. But we're not really sure about that. But that's what we know for sure so far.
Thanks, Angela. Sounds like a lot of students will be using this, which is really awesome.
Yeah, and if I get to the point where my foundation students are using it for what I need them to, that's going to save each student $55 in textbook cost, which to me is huge. So, I mean, I'm really excited about that we're almost to that point where I can get rid of that other piece.
Awesome. Does anybody have another question? We have time for one more, if anybody's got one. Okay, thank you, HIT team. We'll have our picnic group go up next. So picnic team, take it away whenever you're ready.
We are the picnic project. I'm Lisa and I was the Scrum Master this semester.
My name is Maria Barnes. I was one of the full stack developers. My name is Taylor, also one of the developers.
And my name is Ryan, and I'm also a developer.
Today we're going to tell you all about Picnic, what tech it's built on, what value it provides to students, what value we added this semester. We'll run through a little bit of a demo, and then we'll do some reflection about what were our challenges, what did we learn, and what was the hardest part for us. Picnic is a web application, which means that it can be used anywhere the student has access to the internet, and it doesn't need to be pre-installed on any of their devices. All they need is their login information. It's made so that students can submit cooking technique and equipment assessments throughout their time in the culinary program at WCTC. And then instructors can grade those assessments with a score and a comment, which gives valuable feedback to the student on how they're doing.
So why does this project, why does this project exist? I thought I was muted for a second, sorry. So we wanted a place to better integrate all the different student assessments. We wanted the instructors to be able to see all the students' work over time, what they worked on, what they haven't, as well as for the students to actually see, hey, like, what am I working on? What do I need to work on? What do I have to do? And we also want a singular place to better accumulate all the data so that it can be sent for certifications and accreditations.
Now, as far as how the project is built, we're using a Vue.js framework as the front end and an ASP.NET backend. Any information or data for this is stored in a SQL database, and communication is done through an API. And the front end essentially communicates with the database via that API, and we are using Dink to PDF for PDF generation. Now to Maria.
What value does it provide? As of right now, the culinary program is unable to use Canvas due to the classes only being able to be seen during a set semester. Picnic doesn't have these restrictions. Students are able to contribute if they are in the program, meaning that they are able to see assignments and grades throughout the whole program. It also provides the instructor and students a place to store assignments and grades.
So what value did we add to this project? So from the previous project, we allowed the students to be able to not only submit their work, but also edit and delete the kind of stuff, and especially the equipment. We expanded the scope of the project from one teacher, one class, to all the teachers, all the students, and all the programs. We also added it so that the instructor could actually leave a comment along with the scores. It used to be just, hey, here's a score of 1 to 7, nothing else. We did a lot of general administrative and maintenance work in the back end so that because it's a huge scope, there's a lot of extra programs, equipment, techniques that may or may not work or need to be added. So just a lot of stuff for people to clean things up. And most importantly, we added the ability to take all the data from the Picnic program and be able to generate a report to be sent for those accreditations and certifications.
Now, I'm going to demo the student homepage. And this is initially what you were brought to when you first sign in. On the left side, we'll see outstanding assessments. You get a drop down of both equipment, and we also get techniques. And to the right of that pane, we get our main page, which is all of your completed assessments that you have submitted. And we get 2 tabs within this for equipment and techniques. These are, again, both ones that you've submitted. And for equipment, when you submit an equipment assignment, you are just showing that you've identified it. And then there's a button on the right at the end to use it. And then if we go to technique, to the technique tab, we can see technique assignments. If we go to create one, we can see all the required fields in order to create a technique assignment. Within the same one, we can also submit equipment or techniques.
and pictures are now no longer required. And if we close out of here and go to the graded assignments tab, we can see all of our assignments that have been graded by an instructor. And the first column, we'll see the score you gave it. Then we'll see the score the instructor gave it. And to the right, we'll see any comments that the instructor gave when grading. And then the last tab, we'll see all of the techniques. I'm blanking. Techniques and equipments assignments all in one table. Originally, all you could see was technique assignments and no equipment, and you could only submit technique assignments. Now, if we go into our hamburger menu and go to the to the profile, on the left, we can see the number of completed technique assignments and outstanding technique assignments, and the following for equipment. If we go to the drop down on any of these assignments, we can see any other information associated with it. And first you see technique assignments, and then equipment assignments are at the bottom. If we click the little picture icon on our technique assignments, we can see the picture that was uploaded alongside the assignment. If we close this, go back up to our second tab, we see a list of both our outstanding technique assignments and equipment assignments. Go to the following tab. We can click this button and get a generated report with all of our assignments in one page. As you can see here, this can be used for a portfolio. And then the next tab can be used to change your password as a student. That is the profile. I will pass this down to Taylor.
All right, thank you for that. So here is the instructors section. So first off, you have a list of all your students. In the back end, we set it so that it is filtered by students in your program. Now, normally you could actually also filter by inactive students, but since we don't have any currently right now, I can't really show that. If you want, you can select, say, a student. You can look at their grades, all the graded techniques, all the graded equipment, anything outstanding that they have. And then if you go over to what needs to be graded, you can see assignments that were submitted. So Ryan submitted a sing. You can look at the attachment. Oh, he just submitted a bunch of wood. Now you can go in and grade, give it a score, as well as a comment. And then now the grade is done, and you can see all the stuff that's previously graded, any stuff there, and what they still have. And then here is where you're actually managing all the different assignments. So you have your equipment, you have your techniques. Those are now separated into two separate things. And if you somehow or reason want to take something away, you can now make it inactive. And if you decide to, say, change your mind, you're like, oh, I want to add flambe back to the list. Just undo that. And now flambe should be back in the list. And so now I will pass this back on to Lisa.
So here I am logged in as an administrator. Originally, when we got a hold of this project, the administrator section consisted of a list of users, but zero functionality. As a group, though, we made it so you can sort users, which is important when you just have a list of all users. And we added the ability to edit a user's information. Say a student was in the baking and pastry program and now they're joining the culinary program. You can add that here. You could change their name if they spelled it wrong, or if they want to use a different email address, you can change that here as well. We added the ability to change their password in case they forgot. And you can also, if you know a student has left the program, you can also mark them as inactive here. The administrator has the ability to manage the programs and courses that exist within the culinary program. So right now we are showing that there is a baking and pastry program as well as the culinary program. If now international cuisine class is going to be part of baking and pastry, you can just add it to baking and pastry with a simple click. And any students in the baking and pastry program will now see the equipment and techniques that are associated with the international cuisine class. And then if like you want to remove it, it also takes just a simple click. You can also manage courses by creating new ones. You can mark them as inactive, which I don't have any right now. So let's go ahead and mark international cuisine as inactive. And then you can see, oh, well, you can't. That's fun. You can also add programs. I heard that Dr. V was working on the possibility of an additional program. So this would be a way for them to add it in so that the students of that new program could work in the picnic program as well. Administrators have the same ability as instructors to add new equipment items and technique items. And then most importantly, one of the big things we were asked for to do this semester was a way for the program to get reports on students, like what they have completed and what they have not completed for program accreditation. So we created this report generator. You can select between completed and outstanding assignments. You can select all students or a student by name. You can select by what year you're looking for information on, and then you can also select by what program. And then you can use that information to generate a report. And then this report will have all the students that filled the criteria from the report generator, and then all the information that they need for their accreditation process.
What challenges were faced? I faced the challenge of understanding what the product owner was asking for.
And I faced the challenge of finding the best way to build and deliver what we were asked to make.
For me, it was like taking this old code and rewriting to add functionality that was deliberately not designed to do.
And for me, the first was dealing with poor practices, especially with database scaffolding, which affected the ability to add more information into the database. And the second is inconsistencies. For instance, there was 3 different types of tables to use throughout the program. It's difficult to remember which one was used where and how it worked.
What did we learn? I learned that working efficiently in a group setting requires good communication.
I learned that it's very important to write good code, both for yourself while you're working on a project, and then for future people working on the same project that you're working on.
For me, this really like hammered home like how the sprint structure operates and why it's used. And it was just a really good learning experience.
And I learned it was much easier to add new things. I didn't need to understand the entire program.
What were the hardest parts? The hardest part for me was continuing a project that was written by others.
For me, the hardest part was taking requests and questions from our product owner and turning those into something that we could deliver within a 2-week interval. And then also trying to steer my group towards making sure that we had a finished product at the end of our semester.
For me, it was taking those like really big, seemingly insurmountable tasks and try to break them down into something I can chip away at, make it more manageable, and at least have something that I can deliver at the end of the sprint.
And I found it hardest to understand how everything had pieced together in the beginning. Are there any questions?
Well, not really a question, just a comment. This is a lot cleaner and smoother than the prior project. You've done a lot of work on this.
Thank you.
How about this for a question? Are 1 or more of you going to be around next semester to give this presentation to my accreditation committee? This is a pretty impressive piece of work.
You're in luck, Dr. B. I recorded it.
Thank you. We could, hold the students over. It's that personal hospitality touch.
I'm not sure they like that much.
I'm graduating on Saturday, but for you, I would come back and talk to your accreditation committee.
Thank you. It will only take you an hour in April. I'm sure they would like to see that. This is really nice. I'm amazed at how much smoother and cleaner and versatile this is. And I thought the last one was pretty good, but this is just leaps and bounds. This is very nice. I think we can adapt this to more classes and expand it into our other programs as well pretty easily. And it's very nice.
Glad that I got the thumbs up from you.
So, yeah, very nice.
Well, I have a couple of questions, I think. So first of all, Lisa, this one's for you, I think. So you had said something about one of the main things you learned was the importance of writing good code. And I think a common theme at this exercise is that the groups come in and say, oh, we inherited this code that's a huge mess. And I'm always curious what the next semester students will say when they inherit your code. Are they? I'm not sure if that's what you were saying, Lisa. Is that what you meant? That the code that you inherited was challenging, or is that not what you meant?
No, that's not what I meant at all. Actually, the code base that we inherited was pretty decent. There's some things I didn't understand simply because I didn't understand how it was done, like how you store images in a SQL database. I know how to store them in a NoSQL database, but so images and image retrieval was there previously, and I didn't understand how that worked. But what I really learned was like when in like intro to programming and they start talking about like solid and graph, like those aren't just buzzwords that they want you to, think about once in intro to programming and then throw out, because like it's really important to have like the parts that are doing the work all in one spot, the parts that are making things look pretty all in one spot, and mixing them all up together just makes it really difficult to navigate.
Gotcha.
And I hope that we've left this project in pretty good shape for the next students who work on it.
Good. Okay, then my next question, I'm going to ask you all the same question as I asked the first group. Did you all feel well prepared for this class project, whatever?
I can go first. I did, in fact, feel pretty well prepared. We did like mock agile experience in one of our classes before, so we sort of knew how like the sprint process went. But coding wise, I felt like in this project, I was really able to take everything that I've learned in my other projects or in my other classes and put it together in one big project. And it wasn't just me going like, well, maybe I can add this on because it would be fun. It was like, nope, we got to add this on because students are going to need it.
Cool.
Yeah, I felt that we were as prepared as possibly we could be. I mean, if we didn't really pay attention in the classes, we didn't actually do all the exercises, then yeah, we would have been way behind. But this was essentially the cumulative test of everything that has come before.
I have something similar to what the previous group said. I felt that I was pretty well prepared, just apart from starting on a project that's already been started. So that was a different experience for me. And, people had different ideas when they started doing stuff. It wasn't me from the beginning.
I agree with what Ryan said about like continuing on a project that was already started. It was probably the hardest thing, just taking the time to understand how the program works from the start. But then after that, I was pretty well prepared.
Any other questions?
So I have a question / comment. First, just comment. So we've seen this project a couple times progress. I was stunned where it's at now. Really, really happy. Really surprised how. And I do want to mention, I think you are the first team ever in like 13 years to actually produce a report that wasn't on the screen. Your PDF plugin, we've asked for that before, and that's always been pushed off to the next group. No one's ever actually done that. Am I right, Nikki? You don't?
I don't think so. I think you're right.
It's something I've wanted before on other projects, and just always got pushed back. How was that? Figuring out how to make it into PDF. Was that easy? Was that extra work? What do you think? Because we didn't do it in class.
Well, initially we actually did a lot of research. Lisa did a lot of research trying to find something that would work, but all we really found were things that were trials and eventually would require a payment, or I think they just didn't work very well. And I think I did one quick search and found something that I had just tried to implement, and it actually it involves a little bit of work getting it in there, but once it's in there, it's pretty simple. It's just an HTML layout, and that's really it.
Yeah, the way it turns out is you write like a backend API method that gets all the information that you want, and then you use like C# string builder to build an HTML page that you then put the information in. We actually linked the article that we got all the information to in the README for our project, so future groups won't be at a loss as to how this magic works.
Thank you for being kind to the future students.
How hard was it to make it so it works for more than one class? Because the previous team did not architect it that way. I don't think.
To make
What's that?
To make the project work for more than one class?
Yeah, no, the application. So that would work for baking and culinary.
It involved a little bit of work. I don't know, we had to add new tables to the database so that we could keep track of what program students were in, and then what program like instructors taught in. And then rather than going class by class, we just went via program. So if you're in the baking and culinary program, you see all equipment and techniques that might be in any class in the baking and culinary program, which when we talked to Dr. B, he said that was fine, because like if you're taking just a technical diploma, you might then see, oh, well, it's only going to take me like 12 more things to complete. And that's the difference between like my technical diploma and an associate's degree. So maybe I want to do the associate's degree instead. So other than, Ryan did most of the work on the sorting, so.
I don't really have much else to add. We just had to add the tables that kept track of what program students were in, and same for teachers.
I have a general comment for both groups. First of all, I always love being part of this and viewing the work that you all do, but I have to say that you've clearly demonstrated technical skills, which is, clearly important in your degree program. But beyond that, in all the conversations that I have with industry partners, they say over and over again that they really need those soft skills, the ability to present, the ability to work in teams, and articulate what it is that you are doing, maybe to a customer or to a leader. And you've clearly demonstrated that as well. And I think that's really something that lacks in a lot of other institutions. And so the fact that you've done both the technical, the soft skill, and you've done such a great job is a sign that you're all going to be wildly successful. So thanks for including me today. And I really enjoyed the presentations of the work that you did.
Thank you.
Do we have any more questions or comments for the groups as a whole?
Yeah, I'd like to, this is Allie, I'd like to echo what John said. You know, I've been such a strong proponent of the soft skills aspects of it, and both of your presentations were very clear. I understood what you got out of it. I understood, even though I couldn't see for safety reasons what you guys were presenting. It was, I'm familiar with the application, and I could tell what was going on. You appeared confident and you knew your stuff. And the lessons learned through that you guys described really speaks to some of what John was talking about. And we really do hear that from industry all the time, is, you know, they're really looking for students who are well-rounded and that they're looking to hire and bring on their team. So really wonderful work. I am extremely impressed in what you guys have presented today.
I'll take it one step further too. I want to say that you are a product of what you learned in the classroom, and clearly your instructors did a top-notch job of preparing all of you for this. So good work to all the instructors.
All right, thanks everybody for coming. We hope to see you again. Students, if you could stick around for a few minutes, I just have a last couple of things for you. And that concludes our presentation.
Great work, everyone. I'm super proud of you guys. You did wonderful.